you, please call our toll-free number, which is 833-288-EWTN. Now, that applies only to North America, United States and Canada. So 833-288-3986, which is the same as EWTN. If you are outside those areas, just call country code 1, area code 205-271-2985. 1-205-271-2985. Or email us by to openline@ewtn.com. All right. And if you know how to do this, which I have never done, you can text the letters EWTN to 58177. Wait for our response, then text us your first name, brief question. Okay, I hope you people know how to do that. But what I do know how to do is answer some of these. I can read, so I'll do that. This is, the first one is from Elizabeth. She writes, over the last few months, I've been immersed in Father John Marr's fascinating and thorough treatment of Jesus in his Marginal Jew series. I'm curious to hear your opinion of the oft-cited Q document. Do you believe it exists? Marr does admit to an ongoing debate about its existence. Just curious to see what you think. Q is the letter assigned to this alleged source that was used by the synoptic gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, especially Matthew and Luke. It is proposed. It's a theory. There are no copies of it. No copies exist. No book like it is mentioned anywhere among the fathers. It's a way to try to account for the fact that St. Matthew and St. Luke contain a lot of stories with very close wording, and a number of scholars back in the 1800s and later assumed that there had to be a document from which they copied those quotes. And so you'll see that mentioned in many of the commentaries. Q stands for the German word Quelle. Quelle is German for source or spring. They think that this was the source for the Gospels. I don't know. There are a number of ways that people explain the similarities between the two Gospels. That's one, but there are others, just including the belief that people memorize things and that they had heard things repeated, and that it's not always literary. But again, that's more than I can get into that debate. I don't oppose it on doctrinal grounds, but neither do I say you can go to the stake for it. It's an interesting theory, and it's important for a lot of scholarship. But again, it's a supposed source. We don't know for sure. And then we get one from Greg, who writes about the political situation and a variety of moral issues. And he asked me to respond to this. He says, abortion is a hot topic, as we know, and I would say that most people are against it. Most people are against it, but they don't. The majority of Americans do not want to take away abortion as an option. So they would rather not do it themselves, but they don't want to move the option. That would be a fair statement of the present situation. That'd be a majority opinion. It seems that the Republicans have convinced Christians that the only two sins God cares about is abortion and gay marriage. what I find a lot that God cares about is pride and not to lie. And he's against marginalizing people and love. I assume that you mean he's in favor of love, not against love. Um, uh, those things are in the Bible a lot more than abortion and gay marriage in America. It seems like sophistry is a bigger sin than anything else, though sophistry is not at all in the Bible. Sophistry means coming up with uh, arguments that are basically foolish arguments that you can easily shoot down. Setting up a straw argument or talking around and around and around the issue as a way to avoid actually responding to it. We have one candidate who lies in every breath he takes and has divided a nation, and yet Christians love this guy because he has lied to them and they don't understand that lying is one sin that God truly hates. Yes, he doesn't like any sin, but I feel a lie that is continually told and doesn't go unchecked has a lot more harm than a scared girl who doesn't know what to do. Now, this is somewhat confusing. I think this guy's sort of free associating as he writes this. And I think you'd have to be a little less political and ideological. I don't think that Christians love, obviously he's choosing Mr. Trump there. They don't love Mr. Trump because he lies all the time. I don't think that's one of the criteria most people use. I would say that the biggest issues in this election on all sides, especially for independents and Republicans, is the issue of the economy, specifically of inflation, and the large number of people who have come across the border. Also, with that, of course, is included the issue of 100,000 people a year dying of fentanyl, as well as human trafficking. Those tend to be bigger issues. And a woman, a girl who is scared is not a sin. But if in her fear, she is encouraged to kill somebody, that would be very wrong. You can't undo the killing of a child or of an adult, for that matter. You can't undo that. Lies you can refute, which is what we're supposed to do in the media and in our conversation. Then he goes on and sort of seems to change subject. The church says no abortion and no contraception, but I feel that is an incorrect teaching in regards to contraception due to the fact that if you have kids, you have to provide for them, and all of us don't make $100,000 a year. So using contraceptives is important because the kids have to eat and drink and have clothes. So if you even have more than one kid, it's extremely expensive now compared to years past. So I believe in some aspects the church needs to perhaps amend some of their teaching. Please let me know where I'm wrong and right, please, and thank you. Okay, a couple things. It is expensive. It's always been a challenge to raise children financially, unless you live on a farm. And even then, it could be challenging if the rain doesn't fall at the right time and the prices aren't good, etc. But, I know when I left home in 1968, it was my mom, my dad, and 4 of us children. And my dad kept us all fed and housed with $5,500 a year. Not $55,000, $5,500. So, there's ways you have to cut back. We'll come back, and I'll just try to tie that up after the break. It's a hard break. I'll be back in a minute.
Wherever you are in the world, you can access the EWTN Global Catholic Network. It's everywhere. You can get EWTN's great Catholic programming on your car radio, at home on your TV, computer, or smart speaker. With EWTN's app, you can take EWTN everywhere on your phone or mobile device. If you want your news in print, turn to EWTN's paper of record, the National Catholic Register. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
This is Father Joseph Mary. On Mother Angelica Answering the Call, we'll bring you viewer phone calls and Mother's Great Responses. Sunday afternoon, 2 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
The Immaculate Heart of Mary signifies the great purity and love of the heart of the Blessed Virgin Mary for God. It points us to her profound interior life, where she experienced both joys and sorrows, yet remained faithful, as we too are called to do. August is dedicated as the month of devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Consider doing something special for Our Lady. Enroll in the Brown Scapular, wear a miraculous medal, begin praying the Angelus or the Memorare daily. You can find art, medals, pendants, prayer cards, and more devoted to Our Lady at EWTNRC.com.
Celebrating the precious gift of life. This is EWTN Radio.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question, call 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 1-833-288-3986. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. Or send us an email to openline@ewtn.com.
All right, we have some folks already on the line. I think there's still another line open for 833-288-EWTN. But I just was finishing up this email from Greg, who said that he thinks that the church's ban on abortion and contraception is incorrect. Keep in mind that the prohibition of abortion and contraception is not something that was invented in the 20th century. That goes back to the 1st century. In the Didache, contraception, called pharmakeia, in Greek, in that, because they had a variety of ways of attempting to prevent birth. And abortion is mentioned specifically in the letter of Barnabas, which is written around 85 AD. And it was universally prohibited by not only by Catholics and Orthodox, but also by the Protestant reformers. And it was only when the Episcopalian Church changed its doctrine in 1929 about contraception that, of course, it followed that they changed their mind on, they voted to allow abortion, I think in 1931. And that has devastated their church along with a variety of other decisions, including, changing the meaning of marriage, et cetera, et cetera. No, Greg, you're incorrect on being able to change that. Yes, does having a child mean sacrifice? Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. And a lot of sacrifices. And sometimes, in order to limit family size, there's a sacrifice of refraining from relations at the times of ovulation. That can be guided, not just by a rhythm method. There are other methods like the Billings method, etc. You can look up natural family planning, and the church didn't invent those techniques, but it promotes them. And it does matter how you limit family birth. The ends does not justify the means. That's a doctrine that leads to a great deal of sin. No, it is expensive, but when you do parenting and you love your children, there is a long-term as well as a short-term benefit. That it's difficult, it's a strain, but I recommend a book called family unfriendly. I can look up the author in just a moment, in fact. Family Unfriendly is written by Timothy Carney. Take a look at some of the ways that he proposed. He's a man with 6 kids. He can speak to this issue more profoundly than I can. I would strongly urge you to read his material to see how we can help create a family-friendly society, because right now the world is in a time of population decline. Population winter is coming. So this is something we have to pay attention to. All right. Let us now go over to our phone calls. Thanks for that, by the way, Greg. Let's go to Tony in Dallas in the Republic of Texas. Tony, what can we do for you?
Hi, Father Mitch. Excuse me. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a cradle Catholic, love my Catholic faith. I'm so blessed to be a Catholic.
Yeah.
And I've known since being a young man that during Mass, communion is open only to Catholics. Mm-hmm. And I never really questioned why. I just know that that's why. But I have a good friend who's a devout Methodist, and he says, at my church, when we have communion, which is Communion Sunday, once a month, we have an open table. Why don't Catholics allow other members, other Christians, to partake of communion? And I didn't know what to tell him, so can you explain it to me?
Sure, Tony. No, it's an important issue. We deal with that often here, and it's good to repeat. Ask him what his church believes about the Eucharist. In fact, one of the things you might ask him to do is ask, what does your minister do with the wafers that are left over? They usually call them wafers in their churches. Ask them what they do with the hosts or wafers that are left over. And for instance, I was shocked myself at some of the answers I just recently got. I was talking to somebody who was in a Lutheran church. They would take the leftover hosts and feed them to the ducks and geese. Now, and another, an Episcopal church, they just take whatever's left over, put it back in the bag, and then use it again the next week. And one Methodist minister's wife would make bread pudding out of the leftover hosts. These are not things that I learned on the internet. This is from personal contact. And that speaks to the difference in faith about the meaning of the Eucharist, doesn't it?
Yes.
We would never do it. I was thinking about this at noon. I celebrated the noon Mass at St. Elias this morning. And, as I was purifying, we purify the chalice and the paten to make sure that no fragments are left behind. And we clean it because every tiny fragment is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And we have martyrs who died for protecting the Eucharist, right?
Right.
And this, I don't know what your friend believes about their communion service, but to let him know, to ask him, well, what do you believe about that the Eucharist is? And this is what we believe, so much so that many of our members over the centuries have died protecting the Eucharist from desecration. And because we believe it really is the body, blood, soul, and divinity. And if you don't believe that, and here's where I would ask him to go. Take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 11. You better write this down. And read especially verses 25 and following. And where St. Paul says, some people do not discern the body when they receive communion. And for that reason, some of them get sick and some have even died. Now, this, we make it, it's not something that we invented. St. Paul writes in sacred scripture that discerning the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist is an issue that matters for as a life and death issue.
Well, can you be a Protestant and still believe that it is actually the body and blood of Jesus?
Some actually do. Now, they are going against the teaching of their denomination.
Right, I know that. Yeah, I realize that.
And then here's where it comes to play. There are many of our wonderful friends up in Canada who might say, I like the American Constitution with its protection of freedom of speech better than I like our Constitution in Canada, where they don't have as much freedom of speech as we do. And therefore, I feel I should go to the United States and vote in your next election. What would you say?
You can't do that.
Of course not. You have to take the oath of allegiance to the United States, and we expect you to pass some tests about American history and law and Constitution before you can do that, because becoming a citizen requires a certain amount of knowledge that you say yes to and pledge allegiance because in the case of a war, you might be asked to go to war with us if you're one of us, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, you don't, even if they believe what we believe, but don't become part of the family, the Catholic family, they still don't have a right. They can agree with us, but you have to be one of us. There'd be a lot of things in your family that you probably wouldn't invite strangers to do that are part of your family. It's only when somebody is part of the family that you say, yeah, of course you can do this. And this is, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I appreciate your answer, putting it in terms I can understand, because I felt really bad. He was asking me questions that I couldn't answer, but I never really thought about it because that's just the way I was raised.
Sure.
I need to have some ammunition because it'll come up again.
No doubt. But ask him to think and do it in a time, not right before church or something, but when you have a time to sit and think and talk about it a little bit. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Let us now go to Cincinnati, where Teresa is speaking. I love Cincinnati. What can we do for you, Teresa?
I was just wondering if you could tell me how the church came to believe in a geocentric universe instead of a heliocentric, and then how they came to believe in a heliocentric.
Okay, sure. First of all, everybody believed in a geocentric universe in early times because that's what the scientists taught. Were you aware of that?
No.
No scientist taught a heliocentric universe. The church was holding with the science of its days. So if you want to study, you can read these books. These books are available in English. Ptolemy lived in Alexandria, and he wrote about the universe, but everybody assumed that the earth was the center. Can you hold on, Teresa?
Sure.
All right, let's hold on. We'll be back in just a minute.
Hi, this is Father Mike Schmitz. Please join me for Ascension's Bible in a Year and Catechism in a Year here on EWTN Radio. We're going through the entire Bible and the Catechism in 365 days. If you've ever wanted to understand what it means to be Catholic and allow those truths to shape your life, this is for you.
Bible in a Year and Catechism in a Year with Father Mike Schmitz, tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on EWTN Radio.
For over 40 years, EWTN has been praying with and for people throughout the world. Today, we want to pray for anything that weighs on your heart. Send us your prayer request at EWTN.com/prayer.
It's time for another EWTN Real News Minute.
The year 354 A.D. Aurelius Augustinus Hippolytus is born in North Africa. He is introduced to Manichaeism, a false religion combining paganism, Gnosticism, and Christianity. At the young age of 20, the young Augustine, as he is known, finishes his academic studies in Carthage and becomes a professor of rhetoric. Inner turmoil drives him to Milan, where he meets Ambrose, Bishop of Milan. The Christian content and rhetorical brilliance of Ambrose's sermons amaze and deeply impress Augustine. In 386 A.D., Augustine converts to Christianity, aided by his mother Monica's unceasing prayers. In 391 A.D., he is ordained a priest and later elected Bishop of Hippo.
Hi, this is Janet Williams. You don't have to be a woman to enjoy Women of Grace tomorrow at 11 Eastern on EWTN Radio. Now, back to Open Line with Father Mitch Pacwa.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
All right, we are back on the air. Again, you can still call in. We have a line open. It's 833-288-EWTN. That is 833-288-3986. Or outside North America, you can call country code 1, area code 205-271-2985. We are continuing a call from Teresa in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she's asking about why did the church hold a geocentric worldview? And I was starting to say that this is what everybody assumed. This was the worldview of the world in ancient times. I can't think of any societies that thought of a sun-centered solar system. Everybody thought that everything went around the earth. That's why in our language we still have the song "Sunrise, Sunset." You know that we believe that the sun rises and sets. It doesn't. The earth spins into the part of space where the sun's light is shining, then it spins to face the other direction. That's when it's night. But there's no sunrise. It's just you're spinning. By physics, of course, in our language, we use sunrise and sunset. But the Babylonians, everybody assumed that the earth was the center of the universe, and people like the Greek astronomer Ptolemy studied, the movement of the planets and the stars and stuff, etc. Just as that, it was the movement of the planets and the stars. Now, the planets, of course, move, but the stars, relative to us, don't move. They are moving, but they don't move relative to our location very far. So that's what they just thought. Does that help?
Yeah.
And then the way that here's what changed. Galileo taught that the rise and fall of the tides was proof that the earth goes around the sun. That's not true, is it, Teresa?
Right. No, that's because the moon.
The moon goes where?
around the Earth.
Exactly. See, that's the thing. The church said, wait a minute, that's from the moon going around the Earth, not the Earth going around the sun. So that was, geocentric evidence, and he was incorrect. Later on, he changed his mind. He began to do more research and more observations. But what changed everything, and the church said, okay, now you have proof. And that was the transit of Venus. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, the Venus goes around the equator of the sun. It's not quite 75 years, but it's close to 75 years or so. We can observe Venus going across the equator of the sun, compared to our relationship to Venus and the sun. And this was observed and measured all around the world for the first time. And in Russia, the South Atlantic, the South Pacific, in India, all over the world, this was observed. And scientists came back with their data, and they were able to calculate a bit. They still had problems because they're they didn't have accurate clocks to measure the movement with. But they were getting close at measuring how far the Earth is from the sun. That was one of the first attempts to do that. And when that was demonstrated, the church said, oh, okay, we go around the sun. And it was no big deal. But they didn't want to make that change without scientific evidence. And that's how that changed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to study the history of astronomy as well as study astronomy itself. So that would be something worth taking a look at. All right, thank you for the question, Teresa. I appreciate it. Let us now go over to Sam, who is in Boise, Idaho. Sam, what you got?
Hi, Father Mitch. Good to talk to you again.
Same here. What's up?
I have a shirt. On the back of it, it says, God gave the archangels weapons because even the Almighty knew that you don't fight evil with patience and tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question on that by a fellow parishioner.
Mm-hmm.
And I am aware that Jesus said, if someone slaps you, turn the other cheek.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware that Jesus said, don't forgive your brother 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. I am completely in the dark as to ever recalling the Lord saying, when evil shows up at the door, just open the door and be passive and let them have their way.
Yeah, no. And this is something, there are lots of times. Did your interlocutor in your parish say Jesus would want us to open up the door and be patient?
No, did not say that.
Okay.
But as I did point out on the main doors into the church, we have St. Michael with his sword battling the dragon in Revelation.
Yep.
And the response was, but we're in the new covenant now.
So was that battle. That battle is in chapter 12 of the book of Revelation. And
I should have been on the ball with that.
I think you should have too. Get on the ball.
Yes, sir.
And those are your marching orders, sir.
Yes.
A couple things. There are times when there's not much we can do against certain kinds of evil without doing more harm by taking those efforts. So, for instance, when there was a certain point at which the Nazi invasion of Europe so overwhelmed each country that there got to be a point where further defense of the country only meant more damage to lives, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yet there are, they made an efforts. Poland's fought pretty well until the Russians came in from their back. That was one of the keys to Poland losing to the Germans. The Russians attacked from the east while the Germans were attacking from the west. Then they were overwhelmed, and the best thing for the Polish army was to leave the country if they could and regroup, and they joined the British army and Air Force and fought another day. But they did fight. They fought in the air battle of Britain. They invaded Italy with the Allies, and the Allies did go and end the Nazi occupation. And overall, we'd say that was a good use of military power to stop the grave evil of National Socialism, right?
Yes.
And there are parallel situations that there are times when, we should be against pornography and human trafficking. These are grave, grave evils. But we also have to see, would the fight against pornography and human trafficking lead to the deaths of many more people? If we went in there with guns blazing in many circumstances, would that save lives or hurt more lives? That has to be taken into account. And when we are fighting against evil, St. Thomas Aquinas talks about that. There are certain sins that you can't stamp out without causing more evil. But other times, for instance, in some of the, in our state here, we have a battle in regard to books that have sexually explicit material being written for small children. We're talking 5, 6, 7-year-olds. And, encouraging them to sexual acts with their pets. And these are in the public libraries. It is worth fighting to bring that to an end, is it not?
Yes, sir, and certainly so.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't, it will get worse. And so when it was not able to be stopped at the local library, the people who recognized the danger went to the state level and fought it on the state level and won. This is what we have to do. And so it is worth fighting against evil. But as I said to the earlier guy, Greg, that had written the email, the ends does not justify the means. The means have to be good means to accomplish a good end. And we have to keep that balance with wisdom and careful thought. Does that help?
Yes. One thing I probably should have mentioned is on the shirt, it also is a blank-faced angel holding a semi-automatic rifle. To me, this was not a political statement as a member of my parish's security team, and generally speaking, I'm the first line of defense in our parish.
Yeah.
And I don't think I need to confront somebody who wants to come in and cause anarchy and chaos with patience and tolerance.
Here's what I would do. I know it's a little old-fashioned, but the angels are generally portrayed with swords. Stick to the swords instead of the semi-automatic or automatic rifles. That may get you by a little more easily. You've got scriptural warrant for that, not for the rifles. It just might help your cause a little bit. Okay?
Appreciate that, Father. Thanks so much.
God bless you. All right, let's go to Julianne in the Republic of Texas, Fort Worth, where the West begins. Julianne, what can we do for you?
Hello, Father. It's so great to talk to you today.
Thank you.
I have a friend. We were discussing the Apostles' Creed, and in her version of it, it says, it doesn't say he rose again from the dead. Every version of the Apostles' Creed I've ever seen has the word again in that. And she was surprised at that. She had not seen that before. And I was wondering if you can explain the word again and why it's in the Apostles' Creed.
Yeah. Do you know any Greek?
No.
Okay. Here, because that's the key.
Okay.
The Greek word for resurrection is anastasis. You probably heard of women with the name Anastasia.
Yes.
Or Anastasios for guys. That means resurrection. And the stasios means to stand. The ana at the beginning is a prefix that means either again or up. It can be either rise up or rise again. And that's where the idea of the rise again came from. And when they translated it into Latin, I think they used the word iterum. Again, just to help translate that very specifically, because the creed was originally written in Greek. And so it's just trying to be faithful to the Greek word and the use of, it's not that he rose once and said, oh, that was fun, let's do it again. No. It's just that he had been alive and now he's raised again, in the sense of he's back to life. But it's more a function of the way Greek language is structured than it is saying that there are more than one resurrection. Does that help?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And I think it's just about time for you, Julianne, to go and get some Greek classes. That's all I got to say. All right. Let's now go over to Peter, who is in the far west in Seattle. Peter, what can we do for you?
Good afternoon, Father Mitch. It's great to speak with you.
Thank you. Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh, is that better, Father Mitch?
I can hardly hear you.
Oh, I'm so
there you
sorry
are.
about that.
Okay, I got it.
Is that better, Father Mitch?
Yep. So what can we do for you?
I have a question about prayer. If you are in a situation where you're just overwhelmed or you don't know exactly what to pray for specifically, is it good to say a Hail Mary in those situations?
Oh, yes, I've done that many a time. When I'll never forget, I was having a fairly serious heart attack 8 years ago. And I first did the act of contrition, very specific to a very specific need, but because they said I was having the Widowmaker. Otherwise, I was something of a wise guy in response when he said, "Sir, you're having the Widowmaker." I said, "Well, that can't be. I've never been married." And he said, "This is no time to joke." Well, it's my heart attack. I can joke if I want. But at any rate, I then said 2 Hail Marys because, I just was in a lot of pain and just got to praying, and the Hail Mary was a good thing to pray at that moment. So, yes, you can make that a general prayer for lots and lots of circumstances. Not a bad thing to do. Does that help?
It sure does. Thank you, Father Mitch.
All righty. Let's now go to Maria, who is in one of my favorite cities. As a boy, we started grammar school back in 1955 in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Maria, what can we do for you?
Hi, Father Mitch. My question is, does the dogma of Mary's virginity, does it extend to the way in which Christ was born? As in, was he born in the natural way? Or do we have to believe that he somehow did not come out that way?
Yeah, it's left unstated. What's maintained is that she was perpetually a virgin, but nothing specific. I mean, you hear some of the fathers speculate that it was somewhat like Christ entering the upper room on the day of the resurrection when the doors were shut. And that's the one speculation that has been made by the fathers, but the dogma doesn't make it more specific than that. The dogma is just that she remained perpetually virgin, and then the rest is just left unstated with the kind of modesty that I think is appropriate to such things. While we just don't want to do theology the way that People magazine does gossip. We don't need to know all the details. Some things are just better left, unstated, and just let that be. So that's it's just left unsaid. But the faith in her perpetual virginity, that is maintained. Does that help?
As far as yes, thank you. As far as not knowing man, yes, I understand that part of the virginity, but we are not compelled to believe, because it's not been stated, that he may not have been born in the usual way then.
Yeah, we don't. It's just left unstated.
Okay. All right.
All
Very
right.
good. Thank you, Father Pacwa.
All right. All right, let us now go over to George, who is in Peachtree City, Georgia, not all that far away from us.
Hi, Father.
How you doing, George?
I'm doing great. I have a question concerning an advanced directive for health care.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question in my estate planning that I want to know which of these choices are allowed in the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
It first assumes these two conditions. I'm in a terminal condition, which means I have an incurable or irreversible condition
Mm-hmm.
that will result in my death in a relatively short period of time.
Sure.
Or I'm in a state of permanent unconsciousness, which means I'm an incurably or irreversible condition in which I'm not aware of myself or my environment.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Okay, so the first choice is try to extend my life for as long as possible using all medications, machines, or other medical procedures that in reasonable medical judgment could keep me alive. If I'm unable to take nutrition or fluids by mouth, then I want to receive nutrition or fluids by tube or other medical means.
Okay.
The second choice is allow my natural death to occur. I do not want any medications, machines, or other medical procedures that in reasonable medical judgment could keep me alive but cannot cure me. I do not want to receive nutrition or fluids by tube or other medical means except as needed by provided pain medication.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one, and I'll be quick, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I do not want any medications, machines, or other medical procedures that in reasonable medical judgment could keep me alive but cannot cure me except as follows. And it has 3 or 4 choices here. I want to receive nutrition by food. I want to receive fluids by tube. I want a ventilator, or I want my heart or pulse stopped. I want to have resuscitation, CPR used. You can pick any of those 4 as the third choice. So I assume that the second choice is not allowed.
No, it's not. And the expectation would be that food and hydration would be offered to a person, at least hydration. Sometimes when food cannot be, but the intravenous hydration would be because there have been horrible cases of people dying very painfully without any hydration. So that it's an issue of comfort, but a Catholic is not required to have extraordinary means for keeping not even ventilation. There's a point at which when you realize the person cannot live without ventilation. What you may not do is suffocate the person. That is immoral. But you don't have to put them on the ventilator. You can go off a ventilator, and let the person try to breathe on their own. And if they cannot, then it's not necessary to keep the ventilator going. Ordinary medications such as the doctor may suggest, including something, the use of things like morphine and such to help a person be comfortable. Those are permitted. But, if the medicine, for instance, something like chemotherapy would not be necessary to sustain all the way to the very, very end. Again, there's a point at which it can do even more harm than good. That would be something to let the doctors know. But you don't have to do absolutely everything possible to keep somebody alive at all costs. No. But basics like hydration are what the church would call to help the comfort of the person.
And the nutrition, if you don't
if it's
nutrition,
possible, yeah, and nutrition if it's possible, that would be in some cases.
But if I'm choosing this for myself,
yes,
then not taking nutrition, is that equivalent to suicide?
It is, but again, the one thing that has to be accounted for are those certain circumstances where even nutrition cannot be accepted into a body, say with certain kinds of cancer, etc. But
thank you so much.
Does that help?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, great, George. God bless you. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for being with us. May the Lord bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you. Have a great week.
The most original Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
Have you ever been so grief-stricken you can't see God in the